The date was November 14, 2004. Advanced radar operators on the USS Princeton, a U.S. Navy cruiser, detected a UAP performing impossible maneuvers at an altitude of approximately 80,000 feet. At that point, the object descended to 28,000 feet. But that wasn't the most significant detail. It took the object only 0.78 seconds to cover that massive distance and reach sea level. In the blink of an eye. This overlooked speed anomaly is actually the key that unlocks the entire mystery, because no object with physical mass could withstand such acceleration within the rules of our dimension. Perhaps these beings materialize the moment they synchronize their vibrations with the frequency range we can perceive, and once they move outside that boundary, they become exempt from the laws of physics. So, what exactly do the scientific data points that lead us to this shocking conclusion indicate? Let's examine this process step by step. According to models developed by physicist Kevin Knuth and his team, the most likely acceleration of this object during the maneuver in question was 5,370 Gs. Think about it this way. When a Formula One driver is exposed to 5 Gs in a sharp turn, their neck muscles struggle to keep their head upright. The world's best fighter pilots wear special suits to avoid losing consciousness under 9 Gs. Otherwise, blood rushes from the brain to the feet, causing them to black out in seconds. Even the sturdiest fighter jets in aviation history would structurally shred like paper during a 20 G maneuver. But this object was moving at 5,370 Gs. Do you think we can still call this object a vehicle or a material body? The energy that should have been released during this time was equivalent to the explosion of about 100 tons of TNT. According to the laws of physics, the friction of this object against the air should have turned it into a massive fireball and created a colossal sonic boom. But there was no sound, no flame, and no shockwave. Nothing. At this point, we're all thinking the same thing, aren't we? Metallic spaceships and extraterrestrial technologies traveling faster than light across galaxies. But the detail we're truly missing is that this object might not be a spaceship at all. Perhaps these beings, who can change their frequency or even locally freeze time, whether by their own will or as a result of a different influence, might actually come from another dimension or a reality beyond our perception, rather than another planet. In fact, while materializing themselves, they might be adapting to the expectations deep within our minds, taking on the very forms we are ready to see, essentially wearing physical masks.
Now, throw away all the flying saucer cliches, lean back, because today we are pulling back the veil on that great secret that could shatter the boundaries of time and human consciousness. Please don't forget to subscribe and support our channel by liking the video. If you're ready, let's begin.
First, let's address this invisible wall issue. Why don't UFOs create a sonic boom when exceeding the speed of sound? According to a draft report by Harvard University astronomer Avi Loeb and former Pentagon official Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, it is inevitable for any physical object moving at massive speeds through our atmosphere to turn into an optical fireball. However, military pilot reports show these objects moving without using any wing or engine mechanisms, completely defying Isaac Newton's law of action-reaction.
This is exactly where Dr. Harold Puthoff and his theory of metric engineering come in. According to Dr. Puthoff, these craft do not fly by cutting through the air in the sense that we understand. Instead, they use vacuum energy to warp the space-time around them, creating an isolated space-time bubble. In physics, this is known as a warp drive. So, what does this bubble actually do? In the simplest terms, it zeroes out inertia and mass. I want to explain this in an understandable way rather than using fancy scientific jargon. Think about it. If you suddenly hit the brakes in a car going 80 miles per hour, your body is thrown forward violently. That is, it tends to resist this change in motion. This is inertia. Now imagine this vehicle stopping instantly while traveling at 20,000 miles per hour. No known material could withstand such force and would instantly shatter. However, because these craft are inside their own custom-made bubble, they are completely isolated from the physical laws of the outside world. No matter how sharp the maneuver the craft makes, not a single tremor is felt. They never make contact with air or water.
They glide, as it were, through a frictionless void within the very fabric of the universe. That's why we see no fireball and hear no sonic boom. In other words, you aren't looking at a metal machine, you are looking at a masterpiece of metaphysical technology that creates its own micro-universe and cancels out the laws of physics. Quantum physics tells us that space and time are an inseparable whole. If a craft can warp space, it means it also warps time. This leads us to the most scientifically profound and overlooked part of UFO encounters: missing time. The cases of mechanical clocks stopping or missing time, frequently mentioned by UFO experiencers, are not coincidences. On the contrary, they are the most concrete evidence that space-time around that object is physically warped. Previously, these experiences were thought to be psychological shock or trauma-induced amnesia. But the situation is very different. Imagine you have an inflated balloon that won't pop. You mark two opposite points on the balloon, far apart. Under normal conditions, to get from one point to the other, you'd have to travel a long way along the surface. However, a UFO covers this distance in seconds by squeezing that part of the balloon to bring those 2 points closer together. Here's the secret. When you squeeze part of a balloon with your hand, you don't just change its shape, you also disrupt the internal pressure and the tension balance on the surface. On a universal scale, that tension balance is time. While these craft compress space and eliminate distances, they inevitably disrupt the rhythm of time in that region. While life in the outside world flows at its normal pace, time slows down, or nearly stops, for someone inside that compressed area. This is not an illusion. It is Einstein's theory of general relativity manifesting in the field. For example, consider the famous Betty and Barney Hill case of 1961. While driving on a deserted road, this couple encountered a UFO, and when they arrived home, they realized with horror that their journey had taken 2 hours longer than it should have. This 2-hour gap was completely erased from their conscious memories and could only be uncovered through deep hypnosis sessions conducted under medical supervision. Or think of that eerie night in 1979, experienced by Deputy Sheriff Val Johnson in Minnesota. While on patrol, Johnson drove through a beam of bright light that had landed on the road. When he woke up, his vehicle was on the side of the road, the windows were blown out, and the clocks had advanced. But the truly chilling detail was this. Technical analysis revealed that both the sheriff's wristwatch and the mechanical clock inside the vehicle were exactly 14 minutes slow. It was as if those minutes had physically never happened inside the metric bubble created by the object. According to the years of in-depth analysis by renowned researcher and author John Keel, we assume the universe consists only of the narrow spectrum allowed by our physical senses. Yet, all matter is essentially compressed energy and possesses an electromagnetic frequency.
According to Keel, UFOs are not solid earthly matter in the way we understand it. They are materialized versions of pure energy existing in much higher frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum that we cannot see. Just as countless Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and 5G signals are flowing through your room right now, but you can't see them without the right receiver, UFOs actually share the same space as us but exist on a different frequency. When they want to enter our dimension, they lower their frequency. The first limit the human eye can see in the light spectrum is ultraviolet and violet. Keel notes that these objects, entering our world by lowering their frequency, first take on a purple or bluish-green color, and when they fully assume a material form, they become a brilliant white. When leaving or ascending, they shift toward infrared, the lower end of the spectrum, turning red before moving outside the spectrum and vanishing from sight. Like tuning a radio frequency, these beings tune their own vibrations to our dimension. We mistakenly perceive their departure from the visible spectrum as metallic vehicles bolting toward distant galaxies by exceeding the speed of light. So, what is truly behind these frequencies? Is it just a physical anomaly or an extraordinary intelligence? Our biological hardware is a filter that traps the infinite frequencies of the universe into a narrow range for our survival. This protective software, which builds screens between us and reality, hides the massive spectrum from us, reflecting the world not as it is, but only as much as we are ready to see. Author Whitley Strieber defines this situation as screen memories in his cult classic, Communion. For months, encounters in his home, during states of semi-sleep or wakefulness, with beings known as the Greys, resulted in a state of intense psychological distress,
which he documented with a profound sense of urgency in his book. After 20 years, as Strieber increased his reading and focused on the philosophy of religion, ufology, physics, and metaphysics, he began to completely change his mind. Communion is the most real and honest testimony of my life. I stand by the reality of every line I wrote there. However, I no longer believe in the idea that these beings are classic visitors from a distant planet. Strieber began to believe that these beings were not flesh and blood aliens, but metaphysical and incorporeal entities that temporarily took on the gray form he witnessed. When Strieber touched them physically, he described the texture as like hard plastic, but hollow and electrically charged. This supports the idea that rather than being biological organisms, they are temporary energetic shells, constructed to exist in this dimension. According to Strieber's analysis, they are the visitors we have called fairies, Jinns, or ancient gods throughout history, sharing the same space as us, but living on a different plane. Demons in Christianity, elementals and fairies in Celtic mythology, and in Islam, the jinn, created from smokeless fire, sharing the same world with us and capable of shapeshifting. According to the famous astronomer and computer scientist Jacques Vallée, the behavior of the beings we think of as aliens today is identical to those called demons or elementals in the past. Remember the voice of that terrified man who claimed to work at Area 51 and called into radio host Art Bell's live broadcast on September 11, 1997. Seconds before the broadcast was abruptly cut, he tried to warn the world through tears.
Can't spend a lot of time on the phone. Give us something quick. Okay, what we're thinking of as aliens are they're extra-dimensional beings.
We don't know if what he said was true, but the impossible 5,370 G-force calculated by physicist Kevin Knuth, Dr. Puthoff's warping space-time bubble, and John Keel's electromagnetic spectrum theory, they all seem to converge at the same point.
All those truths we thought were unshakable throughout human history are actually just a single word in the vast library of the universe. All these conclusions we have reached today within the limits of our perception may just be reflections seen through our own narrow window. However, as emphasized in that famous vision identified with the genius of Nikola Tesla, if we want to find the real secrets of the universe, we must start thinking in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. If you want to support my channel, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Until the next mystery, goodbye.